Okay, let's get into it. Who am I? My mission is to inspire leaders to bring their best selves and unique selves forward in service of the greater good and for the planet, really. Now, it sounds quite grandiose, and it is in a way, because what drives me every day to actually work with leaders is because I can really see, and I'm tuned into the fact that we need as many good leaders as we can in the world right now. And I know my role in this, my place is to support leaders can be their best selves. But in particular, I talk about your unique self because we all have my background. It's a little bit different, a little bit unusual. I started my early career as a forensic scientist. So I'm a trained chemist. I have a scientific mindset, and that is part of who I am. I bring that into what I do today in leadership development. So I worked for the Australian Federal Police as a crime scene investigator. That is me in the middle of that picture there. This is when I was deployed to East Timor for over a month, working to support the East Timorese. And as part of my career, I've deployed to a number of countries around Australia, and I spent many years honing my specialty as a forensic investigator. What served me so well by doing that is I have honed my skills in letting the information and the evidence speak for itself, withholding judgment, putting aside any biases to really let the information tell the story. And that serves me really well today as I coach leaders. So just letting it unfold, letting it the information speak for itself. And I always have my scientific mindset. So I use scientifically validated methodologies in the change and transformation space because that's just part of who I am. I then got into leadership roles myself in both federal government and later in state government. And I have a picture here of an Australia Day Achievement Medallion. That's actually an award that I received. I got nominated by my peers. I wanted to just draw on this one example from my time as a leader in government because I'm really proud of this. It was a cultural change transformation project. I initiated it because I could see a need for change to occur so that the environment in which we were working in was not one where we would just survive, but we could thrive. I'm really passionate about that. Like, that is essentially what drove me into leadership, my passion for making things better. And this was a project that was really hard to push through. There was a lot of resistance, and I received this award in thanks for the courage that I showed to push through and get it over the line. It ended up snowballing into a multi-million-dollar change and transformation project for the whole of Australia with the federal police. So something that I'm really proud of and carries with me today. I then now work in leadership development. For a few years, I was an internal consultant, and now I work as an external consultant. So what does that mean? I design leadership programs. It might be a one-off workshop. It could be like a 3-month program, 6 months, 12 months. So I facilitate those as well. And I coach leaders one-on-one, or I do group coaching. And I also have been contracted to design leadership development strategies for organizations, ensuring that aligns with the organizational priorities. So I work a lot in this space, and I work with leaders at all different levels, and I love, love, love what I do. I'm going to introduce a few concepts that underpin the program, the way I've designed it. So I want to start with coaching and mentoring. The reason that I draw on coaching and mentoring in this program is because they're highly effective tools for change and transformation. Coaching in this context is essentially a partnership between you and myself, and we're going to be doing this in a group context. And my role is to foster self-awareness, to create an environment for self-reflection, but then also step that into the so what piece. So what are you going to do with this insight? What are you going to do differently? How are we going to actually turn this insight into action? And we'll be holding each other accountable throughout this program around that. The mentoring aspect, I introduce that through the fact that I will be introducing knowledge, some content from all my years of study in leadership development that I've found really effective and works for my clients already. And I will also be sharing some of my own examples and experiences. I'll be encouraging and inviting others to share examples and experiences so we learn from each other in like a peer mentoring style as well. So it's going to include both elements in the program. This is one of the core foundations of coaching, but also leadership development. This is a very simple formula, so I quite like it. You might have seen it before. Tim Galway published this over 20 years ago in his work on the inner game of work. And essentially, it says our performance is determined by our potential minus our interference. Now, when we talk about interference, it can be external and internal, but most of the interference is internal. So you can increase your performance simply by decreasing your interference. You can work on increasing your potential, but what he found through the research is that the gold is in the efforts to reduce the internal interference because you already have so much potential already there. And that's the foundation of how I'm approaching this program design. Another element that I've brought in is this concept of what are the key elements to be an effective leader. So I'm trained in over 13 different leadership diagnostic tools. That's quite a lot. And they all help leaders understand themselves through different lenses, through different models. And that's all that they're designed to do, is to help you get more insights on yourself. And a number of these are 360-degree assessments that have validated data to indicate what elements do you need to show up with to impact your leadership effectiveness. And if I can summarize, the two core ingredients that impact leadership effectiveness is your self-awareness and your competency. Now, the self-awareness, when I say that as a summary, what I mean by that is knowing yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, knowing what is your main reactive tendency, what are some strategies you can apply when you notice they come up. So it's about noticing in the moment, how are you showing up, and then having the ability to apply a strategy to manage that if need be. So that self-awareness piece, honing that and having the ability to manage the self within that arena as well is important. On the competency side, there are basic leadership skills that we do need. And that could be as simple as learning a model for giving feedback, learning a model for having a difficult conversation, change management, learning a process to do effective change management. All of those types of skills are really important for a leader. The thing I would say is that there is so much information on the internet already on all of those basic skills for leaders that you could have access to immediately today. A lot of free content. If you are subscribed to LinkedIn Learning, like there's a gold mine of information there. It's fantastic. And they actually provide it to you in little bite-sized learning pieces as well. So what I would say with that is if you felt you were lacking in a certain capability area, I would list them down and make a plan over the next period of time to maybe focus on one topic a month, for example. do some learning around it, and then spend time practicing those skills. That's something you can already do today. The reason I've designed this program to focus more on the self-awareness piece is that's the bit that's a little bit harder and needs a little bit of extra support for each of us to do. So there will be a little bit of knowledge and information and some competency upskill, but most of it will be focused on that self-awareness piece. I love that quote in the box at the bottom. This is from the Leadership Circle profile. This is a 360 tool for leaders that is really highly regarded in the industry. And they recently released a blog, and this is what they said, this sentence: the best leaders don't see learning as optional. They see it as oxygen. It's a not negotiable. And they've found through their data that the one leadership attribute, competency, that has the highest correlation to leadership effectiveness is being a personal learner. So I actually want to commend you for even just showing up today for this webinar or watching this recording, because you're already showing me that that is you. You are a learner. You're willing to step in and learn, and you want to show up for yourself. So well done. Honestly, well done to you. There's another comment here around essentially the leaders of our future. It's going to be less and less about the competencies that you have and more about your ability to handle uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity, and constant change. The rate of change is going up exponentially, and I think we would probably all agree that leadership environment today isn't what it was 20 years ago. So what they're finding in the research now in how do we support leaders most effectively is to be working on expanding your capacity to handle complexity. So this program also supports that development. So let me tell you a little bit more detail about the program. I'm really excited about this. And who is it for? It's for female leaders in the public sector who are ready to really step up to their fullest potential, who are tired of playing small, who are ready to really be seen, and they might have a goal, a promotion, a vision of how they see themselves, and they're really willing to take ownership of achieving that dream. So if that is you, the program has been designed for you. There is a reason that I have tailored this to leaders in the public sector, and that's because, of course, my background, I mostly work with leaders in government. It is the fire in which I've been forged, and I also personally feel very called to support leaders in government and emergency services. I have seen and experienced firsthand how hard it is for those leaders, and we need really good leaders in those environments. So this is kind of what I got into leadership development for. So I'm tailoring it for the public sector. The reason I'm tailoring it for women is I'm intentionally wanting to create a safe, contained space for women to really share with each other, be seen in their fullness, in their vulnerability, and support each other. And I think you would all agree there's just something different that females have to navigate, and there's a sense of a shared understanding. So being able to be held with a group of like-minded women is an environment I want to create to support your change journey. So this program goes over 6 weeks. It is an intensive, a deep dive for 6 weeks. So what that means is the first 3 weeks we'll be having a in-person, virtual 2-hour session covering those topics that are listed there. And in between each of these get-togethers, you'll see a dot. That's actually referring to actions you will be asked to take and continue practicing during the week. So we're going to be holding each other accountable to really showing up for ourselves. In the 4th week, you see that there's a strength profile debrief. So that week, you'll each get a one-on-one coaching session with me. Then we will continue with 2 further virtual meeting get-togethers. So the first week, we're going to be focusing on overcoming imposter syndrome. I'm going to be approaching this slightly differently to probably how you've seen it before. Then we're going to focus on strength-based leadership. The underlying content around this is based on positive psychology. And as a byproduct, we'll be touching on building confidence. After that session, I'll be sending you your link to the strength profile survey, so that will give you a bit of time to complete that before the coaching session. Week 3, we're going to be focusing on uncovering your limiting assumptions. So your limiting thoughts, your limiting beliefs, the things that hold you back. And this is going to be the start of that journey. Of course, we will have a lifetime of conditioning that shows up for us today. So we're going to get the process started, but you'll be learning techniques that you can keep applying to keep uncovering and working to really turn those negative beliefs and thoughts around. When it comes to the one-on-one coaching session, we'll focus on the strength profile debrief, but I'll also be supporting you to be able to get the most out of the rest of the program as well. Week 5, we're focusing on the power of presence. So we're going to be approaching this topic from a few angles. We'll be looking at our physically how we show up, verbally how we show up, mentally how we show up, what are our thoughts, and energetically how are we showing up. I really want to support you to come away feeling safe to be seen and to really shine. The last week we're going to focus on the power of purpose. This will be a really nice anchor to support you. Why are you in leadership, want to be a leader? Because leadership's not for the faint-hearted. You're going to have ups and downs, and really being able to use your highest purpose or your big why is going to anchor you through those down periods and the difficulties. I'm going to do a couple of activities now. So this first one, this is a centering exercise, and throughout the program we're going to do a number of these. We're going to experiment with different ones each week, and I'll be inviting you to practice it throughout the week. And the invitation is for you to see what you like the most, what works the best for you. So this one is called the physiological sigh. I first learnt about this through the Huberman Lab. So if you haven't heard of that, Andrew Huberman, he's a professor at Stanford University. He's a neuroscientist, and he has a podcast called the Huberman Lab, and he brings in research from Stanford University, from his field of medicine, school of medicine that he works in, but also from other universities and around, and he shares them. But what I love about it, and I think this kind of gives you an insight into who I am, he brings the science into the field of human change and potential and makes it practical. I love it so much. And this one, it really stuck with me. So I'm going to do a demonstration now, and then I'll invite you to do it with me. So it's quite simple. 2 in-breaths, a double inhale, and an extended out-breath. So you'll see the steps on the right. You want to fill your lungs with the first in-breath through the nose, and then you want to just sneak in a little bit extra air on the second in-breath, and then you breathe out through the mouth. It goes like this. Okay, so I'll invite you now to do 3 with me at your own pace. So just take a moment to notice how you feel now in your body. I can share from my own experience right now. I feel like my whole center of gravity has dropped lower in my body. I feeling my legs more and my feet on the ground. My voice, I think, has gotten a little bit slower, and I'm noticing I feel like my heart has calmed down. It's not racing so much. So it is actually, they did research on what does the body do naturally to de-stress the body, and this is what they found. So we do this naturally to de-stress ourselves. And I tell you what, now when I learned this, I started noticing when I do it without realizing it, and it's now my clue to myself that, oh, I'm actually feeling stress in my body that I didn't even realize was there. So I invite you to do the same. Start to pay attention when your body does this naturally. You'll be fascinated how often you do it. Animals do this as well, so it's a natural response. What they've also found is that this technique is the technique that gives you the most rapid reduction in stress in real time. So, of course, there's lots of techniques to reduce stress in the body. You can go and do a longer meditation, you can do yoga, various other methods. But in real time, like, right before you're about to go into a meeting, right before you're about to deliver a webinar, this is the one you want to draw on. So real-time stress reduction and grounding and centering of the body. Now I'm going to take you through a bit more of a cognitive process. So this is where your pen and paper will come in handy. You might have seen this on the left. I'm calling it the drama triad, but it's commonly referred to as the drama triangle. And Stephen Cartman, he was a psychiatrist back in the 60s. He came up with this. It's essentially a model that explains the type of dynamic we can get into with other people. Now, I want to actually unpack this a little bit through the lens of leadership for a moment and explain it through that concept. So here we have 3 elements of the triangle. The persecutor, so this is where a role we can show up in a relationship. So whether that's between us and our boss, us and our peers, or us and our direct reports. It could be us in relationship to a project, us in relationship to another team. Whatever that relationship is, we can turn up in this persecutor role. And what that means is where we are trying to control a situation, the relationship dynamic. We might use criticism or blame, even sometimes be a bit kind of aggressive and forceful with trying to orchestrate things. So what this does is it devalues others. Then there's the rescuer role. This is where you jump in and you might take over. You're the helper. That actually can put a bit of a power dynamic difference with the person, so you become a bit more superior, kind of denying their ability to handle it themselves. It's somewhat self-sacrificing as well, and it essentially diminishes other people's skills. And then there's the victim. Now, the victim is my favorite, or the one I go to the most. And this is where you act helpless. You have this sense of poor me, you complain, And essentially, you're devaluing yourself and your ability to handle the situation. So, any one of these we can jump into at any different given time. And what happens when we jump into one of these roles is that we almost automatically then cause other people to take different one of the other corners of the triangle. So it creates this kind of unhealthy dynamic. I'm going to give you an example from myself of how I've shown up as each of these in my leadership. So, persecutor. Years ago, I was leading a project to design the leadership development strategy for the federal police. And we had a pretty tight deadline, and I felt a bit stressed. I felt a bit out of my depth, and I was leading the project. I was setting the pace. I was setting up the meetings, and I was really orchestrating things, but in a way that was very demanding of the team. It was a bit unrealistic. I was very controlling of how we were delivering the project and how we would execute each of the elements of pulling the project together. And even, I got called on this by my team because it was coming out in my tone. Like, I wasn't directly criticizing or blaming them, but they could hear my frustration at them in my tone, and kind of I was not happy with, them not meeting my pace and my standard. And I really got called on it, and had to recalibrate myself on that. So, persecutor, rescuer. An example of this, I was overseeing a team. One of my team members had their own project. They came to me with a concern in relation to, they felt there was a delay on the project because the communications team weren't getting back to them to approve their communications plan. And instead of asking them, okay, what are you going to do about it, I jumped straight in and said, leave it with me. I'll contact the communications team for you. Just literally took over and took responsibility for that happening. Victim. An example I want to share, I actually spent a few years being a victim in relationship to me getting a promotion and getting into a formal people leader position. What happened is I felt I was being overlooked for training opportunities in leadership, and other people were getting picked over me. I felt like I wasn't getting a fair go at getting acting opportunities when the leader was on leave. They would ask other people to act in their position instead of me. So I felt like I wasn't getting enough experience to actually be competitive on the promotion rounds. And I spent a few years complaining, feeling sorry for myself, disgruntled. I really was in a disempowered state. One more thing I want to share about this is when we step into one of these roles, we pull others into, I think I mentioned this before, into the other, we can pull them into the other roles. So, for example, that one where my team member came to me around this, the communications team, they weren't getting back to them, they weren't being timely, and it was affecting their project. They were actually turning up more quite in this victim state, and feeling very helpless about getting that element of the project over the line. I jumped into the rescuer, and the villain or the persecutor in this scenario was the communications team, this kind of nameless people, the team, So you can see that just becomes completely disempowering all round. So before we move over to what do we do with this, I want to give you a moment to write down at least one example from your own leadership experience where you have shown up as the persecutor, and the rescuer, and the victim. And if you can be as detailed as possible, a specific example would be great. I'll just give you a moment to jot that down. And if you need a little bit more time, feel free to come back to this. I want to talk about the empowerment triad. So David Emerald came up with this. He actually called it the empowerment dynamic, and I love it. I love that we have something to focus on in terms of, well, what do you do differently? Now, often these are the antidote to the drama triad items. So, for example, the creator is often the antidote for victim. So let me share my example where I was acting the victim around my leadership development and blaming others and feeling for not getting promoted and poor me. And so at some point I decided enough's enough. I'm going to take ownership of my training and development in that. I found a course outside the organisation. I paid for it myself, got it tax deducted. And that was a 3-month coaching and mentoring program. And that literally changed everything for me because it gave me, I started to build my own confidence. I then started to take opportunities of leadership roles, not formal leadership roles, but any volunteering I could do. I stepped up everywhere I could. I ended up taking over as chair of a committee. I ended up doing that for 18 months. It was a really big role, and it was a highly visible role across the whole of Federal Police in New South Wales. And because I was stepping up, I got supported to do some extra training and development to support me more. And then I had all these examples, and I ended up getting promoted off the back of that experience. So here I really focused on what I wanted, and I took responsibility to take action towards that goal. Coach. Coach is often the antidote for rescuer. So this is where instead of jumping in and fixing the problem for them, you sit back and you start asking questions like, hey, what have you thought about already? What else could you do? Who else might be able to help you? What other alternatives are there? And essentially, the implication behind that is you see others as capable. Like you have belief that they can work through this themselves. So much more empowering for you and for them. The antidote for persecutor is often challenger. So this is where you might use, challenge assumptions the person might be making or in the situation, but doing it with kindness and compassion. You might name facts. Oh, I've noticed that you haven't turned up to these meetings for the last 3, and it's having an impact on myself and others, or it's having an impact on the outcome. I'm wondering if you're aware of that. Can we talk about what we might do about that? So instead of starting to kind of attack or, you start to use the facts and information and hold other people accountable for their actions and the impact that that's having. So it's not always the antidote is what I just shared, or the action to take is the one I just shared. You can do any one of these 3 in the triangle to counter the role that you're playing in the drama triad. So just take a moment just to jot down, with those examples that you gave before, which one of the empowerment triad roles you feel would have been helpful in that situation to draw on instead. In this workshop, this is where we would dive into this model a little bit more and deepen understanding. We might go into pairs and breakout groups, small groups, share in the collective group so that we learn from each other's examples. If there was anyone that didn't fully, confused, I don't know what I was showing up with in this scenario, we could do some on-the-spot coaching to kind of really help flesh that out. And so we can all learn from it. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be doing in this program. I I do want to, before I move on, just highlight, I know that it sounds quite simplistic that, okay, just do this instead. But often a lot of emotion comes up when we're tempted to go into these drama triad roles because we're trying to manage that. We've got frustration, anger, disappointment, sadness, like strong stuff, and it can really catalyze these disempowering roles. And so I want to just acknowledge that it can be really helpful to just give yourself a moment to feel that, whatever it is coming up for you, and acknowledge that and own that. And then take a second to then step into, well, what's the best way to handle this situation? Kind of just give yourself that space. You have the power within to change your world. That is a belief I hold so strongly. You do have the power within. And that's what's on offer with this program. It's been designed with proven techniques that support change for people, for leaders, and the invitation is there to join me on this program if you're really ready to make change in your life. 6 weeks dedicated action around making change. If that interests you and you feel you're ready for this, the next step is jump on and buy a ticket. For the next 24 hours, you get access to the early bird special still. That's an additional 15% off the price. The reason I say that is the actual price for this program per person is $1,150, and I've already discounted it for leaders in government because I really want to support the development of leaders in government. But this early bird special is an additional 15% off that. So it's amazing. That's on offer for you. Well done for showing up today. You can go to my website, skleadership.com.au and /programs, or to the programs tab where you can purchase your ticket. There are limited spots because I'm wanting to keep this group small enough to really be able to share across the group and have that level of safety and intimacy with the group. The program starts the 14th of October. I do hope to see you there. I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm going to jump into the Q&A section in a moment, but if you feel like you're complete, feel free to jump off. And I just want to thank you for joining me and enjoy the rest of your evening or your day.